safe streets, vibrant neighborhoods, successful business and commerce. These are things that make a healthy community. We are a diverse community, rural, suburban, urban, a multitude of languages and ethnicities, ages and experiences. We are a collaborative community. Public-private partnerships make us a model community that others want to follow. It is what makes us unique. It is what makes us strong. The employees of Kent County reflect our diversity and seek to serve our communities.
People in this county, in this area, we wrap our arms around each other. We come together to collaborate, to solve problems. We're all working for the good of the whole. And I think that's wonderful. And you can see it. You can see it as you drive around Kent County.
Our impact starts the day a baby is born and a birth certificate is issued, to protecting children from deadly diseases through vaccination, to the public safety and justice provided by law enforcement and the courts, to offering veterans services and caring for the elderly. Every day we work to keep our communities robust.
I think if you are somebody who's interested in serving your community, in building a strong knowledge base and a good group of people to work with, then the county is one of your best employment opportunities out there. It's been completely rewarding in every way I could possibly explain for 26 years, and I feel like I grow every single day still today.
Leading these dedicated employees, our 19-member Board of Commissioners and our County Administrator Controller, along with our elected officials and appointed department directors, placing emphasis on civic involvement, quality housing, vibrant neighborhoods, and strong, solid infrastructure to allow businesses to thrive. Professional, dedicated, collaborative, and innovative.
Behind the scenes, collaboration between foundations, charitable organizations, nonprofits, for-profit businesses, public sector demonstrated through the county, the city of Grand Rapids, the townships, all the cities and the villages in our area. If we don't come together, then we will not have the strength that we have today, and I only hope to build upon that.
Our aim is to make our communities the best they can be. We are involved in exciting development projects, sustainable recycling programs, and creative progressive prevention programming. We partner with elected officials, impacting policy ideas that become great achievements. We seek opportunities to reach out into the community and offer our services to help our residents make Kent County thrive.
Our relationship is solid, both from a staff standpoint at the county level as well as the Board of Commissioners. And they understand what we do and the benefits that we can do for the community, and vice versa. We couldn't do what we do without the help of Kent County.
While most of us are busy running our lives, Kent County's elected officials, administrator controller, and over 1,600 employees are serving the communities where we live our lives, so we can all have a place we are proud to call home. Kent County, its life well run.
Good morning. Let's get started for our Legislative and Human Resources Committee meeting for Tuesday, May 8th. Do we have any public comment today? All right, seeing none, I need a motion for the approval of the April 24th minutes. Moved by Commissioner Korndike, support by Commissioner Vonk. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, moving on to item 3, Department of Public Works Performance Measurement Review, DAR.
Good morning, Commissioners. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present this morning. We're here every year, but this is a special year because we get to spend a little extra time with you this morning and share with you some of our visioning and what's occurred in 2017. I've got a brief PowerPoint here. Several Board of Public Works Commissioners are here as well. So
pull the mic closer to you, Darren.
So we appreciate that. Can you hear? Is that better?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I'll try to stay closer to it.
That's good. You're fine.
So as you know, there's several key areas, 6 actually, that Public Works looks at in terms of how we operate our business. I've got 4 this morning that we would like to focus on. Probably the most critical, I believe, is alignment with board priorities. Public Works has been providing services in so many areas over the years. Presently, we are in the solid waste business, if you will. We manage 4 facilities that deliver services to residents every day, and we want to ensure that we're aligning ourselves well with the board as we continue our services. Our mission statement is to foster collaborative and innovative solutions that deliver value to our stakeholders by managing discarded materials to conserve natural resources and promote a healthy, vibrant, and sustainable community. We drive that with a vision. The Board of Public Works approved this in 2015, and that is to implement sustainable materials management strategies to reduce dependency on landfill disposal. So everything we're doing as we deliver services every day is to look to the future on how are we going to manage our properties, our facilities, and the way that we take care of the discards that are generated here in Kent County. Briefly, we're governed by the Board of Public Works. 5 commissioners from this board serve on that, as well as a road commissioner and the drain commissioner. There's a director. We have 5 managers who run the day-to-day business, and a finance director who ensures that we're handling our invoicing and purchasing and all the other parts of our business well. Key goals and metrics. Several years ago, we began to envision what's called the 20 by 20, 90 by 30 concept. It was really to allow organic conversation around how are we managing municipal solid waste in Kent County and what should it look like in the future, and to rally around a strategy of how to begin to change the paradigm and the discussion around the amount of refuse that we're generating in Kent County. So the plan is to reduce what we're landfilling by 20% in 2020, and our stretch goal is 90% by 2030. We have a couple of significant budget issues that you're aware of, and I'd like to share just a moment or two with you on that. First of all, our waste energy facility became operational in 1990. We're in our 28th year of operation. We generate electricity through the combustion of municipal solid waste, and we sell that electricity to Consumers Energy, who then delivers it to the grid here locally in the Kent County area. We generate enough electricity to service the equivalent of 11,000 homes, which is the city of Walker and the residences they have there in terms of its comparison. Our challenge is, and it's been a 3-year process that we've engaged the county administrator with, as well as our Board of Public Works and others, is that the Public Service Commission is going through a process of deciding what the new rate that we would be paid by Consumers Energy. We're paid what's called avoided cost, which means what does a Consumers Energy avoid by buying our electricity versus generating their own. In November of 2017, the Public Service Commission issued their final order that they stayed 1 month later. So we're still in the process, but that final order was suggesting that we were going to lose as much as $3 million a year in electrical revenue, which would be a significant impact to our facility. We're currently, we have 60% of our revenue generated by refuse tipping fees, and 40% that's generated by the sale of electricity. A healthy balance, 50-50 would be best, 60-40 is certainly manageable. But with the current discussion going on in Lansing, if this rate would actually come into effect, it would have a significant impact, and we would have to look at changing the operation or potentially raising the tip fee to generate the revenues that we need to sustain the facility. The second item I wanted to address is the recycling and education facility. It's running well. We're really pleased with the equipment, the employees, the operation as a whole. But the impact of decisions made last year in China, it's called the China Sword program, where they're now banning the import of certain mixed materials, including mixed paper, first affected the West Coast. Our team was out in San Jose about a month ago, where a facility out there was sitting on a month's worth of paper because they moved all of their paper to Asia. And that ripple effect is now affecting us in West Michigan, in that we trade commodities that are affected by global pricing. And the change in value of mixed paper, as an example, a year ago we were trading at $85 a ton. Right now, we're trading at $5 a ton, and we've been told that it may go negative where we would have to pay $5 or $10 a ton to actually move this paper, even though we're simply shipping it to the Pratt Mill for reuse in Indiana. And that will change our revenue forecast by roughly $800,000, which is a significant impact. So we've begun the conversation at the board level. I've shared it with the City of Grand Rapids. We're going to have to make some budget decisions going into 2019, where we believe the only way that we can make up the difference is to raise the rate that we charge and our tip fee there, which would actually be higher than landfilling, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it creates a challenging message as we share with our community the direction that we want to go as a DPW and a direction that we want to go in terms of how we manage our municipal solid waste and the recycling. Significant accomplishments, you may recall last December we had a scheduled outage for 3 weeks, and during that time we installed an OCC, or old corrugated cardboard baler, processing facility or processing equipment that allows us to take all of the online shopping containers and things of that nature, and where we used to have 6 people sorting out cardboard, this machine now does it on its own without even having a quality control person to have to watch it. We also installed new equipment to accept cartons, such as milk cartons and juice cartons and things of that nature. We were funded in part by the Carton Council, which is a national nonprofit company that ensures that there's processing capacity for these types of materials throughout the country. And they gave us a $400,000 grant, which covered about half the cost of the purchase and installation of this equipment. The positive is that in a very short time, since December 19, we have been able to process, bale, and broker over 50 tons of cartons in just a few months, which is ahead of schedule. And the Carton Council and everyone that's been involved in the project is really pleased with our success in that area. So not only can we process the cartons, the education and the outreach is working, and the residents have really embraced the opportunity to add this to their recycling stream. Another significant accomplishment for those that are familiar with the legacy of the Kentwood landfill, back in 2016 we identified that we had methane migrating off the facility and potentially toward a residential area, along with impact to the Kentwood city offices. In 2016 and 17, we engineered with our engineering consultant and installed a methane collection system, which is really a system of wells that mines the methane, which is generated by the natural breakdown of refuse. And it then moves it to one of these flare systems that you see, and it allows us to destroy the methane instead of having it migrate horizontally toward residents. So we're pleased that that system is in. We have 18 new wells that are mining that gas, and we have a second flare system that's managing it. And it'll take some time, but we're confident that over time that we'll be able to get the methane under control. And we're happy and pleased that the city of Kentwood and everyone worked closely with us for about 18 months to make this happen. Another significant accomplishment, we have seen a significant increase in our education programs, where we had a 30% increase in participation with our educational tours at our recycling and education facility. The picture that you see there is Lauren Westerman. She's a fantastic educator, and how she takes kids through and turns right around and takes another group through is beyond me, but she's really good at what she does, and she has a huge enthusiasm for children and adults alike, and shares our story almost on a daily basis, sometimes several days or several times a day, with children pretty much of all ages, as well as adults. So we have many community groups, school-age children coming from various classes throughout Kent County and outside of Kent County to participate in our education there. And we actually give them a tour of the plant as well on the catwalk, where they can see some of the equipment operating. And we have videos and live cameras that allows them to see different pieces of the equipment as it runs. Although Nick is not part of the work release program, he's our manager, or at least I don't think he's part of our work release program. This is we're so pleased in terms of our collaborations. We piloted a program last year with the Sheriff's Department where we had to make changes to our program where we staff the process line, and we've been making adjustments and changes over several years and found that yet again we had to make a change. Goodwill made the decision to end their transitional work experience program. They were using certain folks from the jail. When we sat down with the Sheriff's Department, they were very responsive. We piloted the program, and this board affirmed that earlier this year, where we now have 2 full-time corrections officers who provide transportation, corrections oversight, and what we were able to do is have work release staff there earning a living while they're incarcerated, giving them opportunity, giving them a chance to build work history and learn what it means to show up on time, work during the day, and spend a full day working. So it's been a great program. My understanding is that there's a waiting list for certain folks to be able to participate, and I will tell you that it's probably been the best move we've made in years in stabilizing our workforce there, and we're just so pleased with that partnership with the Sheriff's Department. Another key collaboration is several years ago, we began to work with the Health Department because we recognized that residents really don't have a great option when they're dealing with certain medical sharps. And we were often finding those in the trash. And we have issues with them going to the recycling center because residents would place them in a milk jug and then place the milk jug in their recycling cart. So we had exposure issues at the recycling center. We'd have exposure issues with the waste haulers who would deal with those at the back of the truck. And our conversation with the Health Department was very positive, and Adam and his staff developed a program alongside of us where we provide the sharps container. They distribute them through the Health Department locations, and then they receive those back at the Health Department, and they ensure that they then go for proper disposal as a biohazard. I think we're in our second, if not third year of the program. It continues to grow. Adam and I met recently and affirmed that the program's working well. We want to continue to see it grow. Another key collaboration is our resource park concept. Many commissioners have probably heard bits and pieces of this. We're working closely with our Board of Public Works. We have an advisory committee that's been developed. It's 10 members of the community that's chaired by former Commissioner Dick Vandermolen. But along with that, we also had 6 stakeholder meetings late last year where we invited in the environmental community, we invited municipal leaders, we've invited manufacturers, the waste hauling industry, and others. We have a vision. We're sharing our information and sharing our thought process, but ultimately it's the community that will have to decide whether or not they want to embrace changes in how we manage municipal solid waste in Kent County and West Michigan. So we're not only allowing them, we're encouraging them to provide that feedback, because it'll be critical, because as a community, as a Board of Commissioners, as municipal leaders and business leaders, we're going to have to decide together whether or not this is the direction we want to ultimately go. Another collaboration was Art Prize. For several years now, we have, I would say somewhat quietly, but behind the scenes, worked with the City of Grand Rapids and Art Prize staff and West Michigan Environmental Action Council to make recycling available and more prominent during the Art Prize event. Our thinking is that not only should you be able to recycle at home or at work, but whether you're visiting Grand Rapids and getting off a plane at the airport, or whether you're downtown at a venue or somewhere else, how you recycle and what that looks like and the messaging should be consistent. And so we're working alongside the City of Grand Rapids. They developed the SORT program. WEMIAC was able to staff it. Art Prize funded portion of it with a grant. And we really are excited that we're beginning to see more and more demand for event level recycling in Kent County and West Michigan. As we look ahead, this is a snapshot, if you will, of what our recycling education center will look like. We're installing, and the Board of Public Works approved $250,000 to completely refresh our exhibits. at the Recycling Education Center on the second level, where we have so many residents come through and students and children. It's really built around the visioning of our 20 by 20, 90 by 30 concept, and it will allow much more interaction, and the exhibits I think are again very well developed. A local company is designing and installing. We had a task group that came together to ensure that we were addressing language barrier and other disability barriers. So we're ensuring that the messaging and everything that we're doing here, that the communities, again, had a chance to weigh in and ensure that what we deliver will be very usable by everyone that participates. Another look ahead, Michigan Stadium. I use this from time to time because I think it begins to provide some sense to the volume and magnitude of how much material could be placed in a facility like this. And as we look ahead and we think about our visioning about reducing our landfill disposal by 90% by the year 2030, most people, most residents, most Kent County based folks don't understand the volume and magnitude of refuse that we're generating here in Kent County. So our challenge is, and this is a snapshot of the South Kent landfill, is we're receiving hundreds of trucks every day, bringing thousands of tons of material in, and so much of that material is reusable. We've done the waste characterization studies that show that 75% of that material is easily recyclable if we just brought it to the right processing facility, or we took that extra moment to source separate it before we actually put it in our trash cart. So Kent County is generating enough trash to fill 2 Michigan stadiums every year, and that's not a one and done, that's every year, and it's growing. 3 years ago, we were generating 1.6 million cubic yards of trash. 2 years ago, we were generating 1.9 million cubic yards, and then 2017, we generated 2.1 million cubic yards of refuse. So we're blessed in West Michigan and Kent County. We've made great decisions. We have great municipal and county leadership, great business leadership. Consumption is up, manufacturing up, the economy is up, and kind of the underbelly, or what we don't think about a lot, is from that consumption and manufacturing and construction, we have a lot of refuse that's being generated. So that is a lot of the reason. Kent County is actually eclipsing the state of Michigan in terms of its per capita and total generation per year. I think the state is just under 4% increase last year, and we were over 4%, which would make sense because of everything that we see that's going on here in Kent County. So not only would we fill 2 Michigan stadiums, if you want to bring it closer to home, we fill 9 Venanle arenas every year full of trash. The question is, what are we going to do in the future, and how are we going to manage this material? Are we going to continue to landfill it? Are we going to continue to do what we've always done, or are we willing to have that conversation as a community and potentially look at shifting the paradigm and doing something that's more sustainable? I have a brief video here that really explains well, it's about a 2-minute video, what we're looking to accomplish. And Pam and I, it worked yesterday, didn't it, Pam? But Pam's the one who made it work yesterday. This is the last slide.
This is the South Kent landfill. Today, about 100 trucks like these will deliver 800 tons of residential, commercial, industrial, and construction waste. Trucks come in and out 6 days a week, all year long, delivering things like cardboard, wood, food, mattresses, plastics, shingles, packaging, couches, clothing, and electronics. Currently, less than 10% of waste in Kent County is recycled. The rest ends up here, in Kent County's waste-to-energy facility, or in another local landfill. In total, Kent County residents and businesses discard enough trash each year to fill the Van Andel Arena 8 times over. That's 1.8 million cubic yards of trash each year. We can do better. We must do better. We have the opportunity to put West Michigan on the map as a leader in recycling and waste reduction, which in turn will protect our air, land, and Great Lakes for future generations. Most of the thousands of pounds of trash dumped into the landfill daily could be reused, repurposed, or converted into materials for manufacturing, fuel sources for clean energy, compost for agricultural applications, or into new products. In many cases, things are thrown away that can be salvaged and reused just as they are. We need to hear from you as we look at ways to manage waste beyond burying it in a hole in the ground. Your voice is important as we transform West Michigan's model of waste management from a linear approach in which we make it, use it, and dispose of it, to one that looks more circular, converting waste materials that would otherwise be dumped into a landfill into products that can be used again. In 2016, the Kent County Department of Public Works took a bold step. Instead of building a new landfill on these 200 acres south of the landfill, they chose to explore extending the life of the current landfill by diverting waste to a new sustainable business park. The new business park will attract companies that specialize in reclaiming or converting waste materials that would otherwise be landfilled into usable materials like fuel pellets, plastic flake, compost, and more. There are opportunities for complementary businesses, startups, and entrepreneurs to tap into these reclaimed or converted materials and transform them into new products, including clothing, automotive and furniture components, and animal feed. The park has tremendous potential for preserving this open space, creating jobs, expanding research, generating renewable energy, and moving us closer to our goals of reducing landfill waste, protecting water quality, and promoting sustainability. Over the next 10 months, we're listening to the needs of West Michigan and exploring the potential to develop this 200-acre piece of land into a sustainable business park that will transform what was destined to be landfill into a community resource that will help West Michigan become a leader in reclaiming, recycling, repurposing, reducing, and reimagining waste through this project.
I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. All right, any questions for Dar today? Commissioner Ponstein.
Chair Bolter. Dar, welcome. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Couple of things, but first, issue with paper that we're recycling. What is normally the end product of most of that after it's been recycled?
Yeah, the mixed paper that we generate at our facility goes to the Pratt mill where they're making a lower grade. It's not going back in the office paper. Usually it's tissue paper, it's paper towel, it's things of that nature at the Pratt mill.
The only place in the world is China.
It's not the only place in the world, but when China closed their doors to this material, it created a glut nationally. And so all the West Coast material that was going to China is now staying domestic. Even the Chicago market, that Midwest market, would move material offshore. And that material's staying, so there's so much material domestically that the prices are depressed as badly as they are. And so everyone's wondering, will China open back up this year, next year, or will new markets have to be developed, whether other Asian countries open up, or whether or not we build more capacity here in the States. But that decision is a large one in terms of its investment and, of course, lead time to build another mill. It's not a matter of months, it's a matter of several years to make something like that happen.
On the waste to energy, with the wanting the rates to change, is this what they call the net metering issues that are working through lands right now?
It's actually a different issue. Ours is known as avoided cost, not net metering. So avoided cost is what consumers avoids paying to generate the electricity themselves. Is a federal law, FERPA, Public Utilities Regulatory Enforcement Act, I think it is, or Regulatory Act. And that federal law required that local utilities purchase renewable energy from small developers like Kent County, as well as hydro, biomass, and other types of plants. So there's a number of us in Michigan that fall into that group. Kent County is a part of the Independent Power Producers Coalition, who for almost 3 years now have been, I'll use the word battling, I guess, but trying to work with the Public Service Commission and Consumers Energy to get a a sustainable rate that's fair to both consumers and to the ratepayers.
Yeah, because it's an interesting issue, because it's not just governmental units. I mean, they're doing this to businesses that made the investment in the alternative energy, and now we're being told, not by just consumers, but DTE, we're only going to give you this much, which makes the whole model why they bought it in the first place thrown out the door. And meanwhile, DTE was saying that not enough energy, this is why we want to do it. But now they're ahead of the Service Commission saying we want to build a new natural gas power plant.
Our experience has been is depending on where the conversation's occurring, so whether it's a conversation in front of the Public Service Commission or the governor or the legislature or the public, the messaging is different. That the net metering is you buy retail, sell wholesale. That's essentially how that works, in that if you produce electricity for yourself and you have enough and you want to sell back to consumers or DTE, you sell it to them retail, but when you need it, you sell wholesale, but when you need it, you buy retail. I understand some of the logic behind that, but it is a very difficult situation, because depending on the day, depending on the filing, depending on who you're in front of or who's listening, the messaging is different from the utilities. Yes, they need generation capacity. No, they don't. Yes, we want to build our own. No, we don't. Yes, we're going to build natural gas. No, we're going to build renewables. I've spent 3 years and gotten really deep into the energy debate, and I know this much compared to everyone else, but it's very complicated. It's very challenging, and depending on the day, the message is different.
Commissioner Vonk.
Thank you, Chair. Just to comment on a couple of things, Dar. You mentioned that we recycled enough material in the information you gave me last week to build 2 Gerald R. Ford aircraft carriers, and I'd like you to speak to that just real quickly. And then you're bringing in SWANA, or what organization are you bringing in the near future, which benefits our community and the airport and
Sure.
in general? So we can speak to both of those, please.
So the waste energy facility came online in 1990, and we have a ferrous or scrap steel recovery program that's a part of that system. In the 28 years that we've operated, the waste energy facility has been able to recycle or recover nearly 130,000 tons of ferrous or scrap steel from the 6 communities that flow the material to that facility. And to Commissioner Vonk's comment, that's enough steel to build 2 Gerald R. Ford aircraft carriers, or the equivalent of the Mackinac Bridge. That material would have gone to landfill had we not removed that material. We have 1 million tons of combustion ash in place at the South Kent landfill in a special monofill. The technology is now there to go back to recycle the scrap steel we didn't get the first time, as well as all the non-ferrous materials. So you're talking brass, silver, gold, copper, all of those materials, and there's value in that material. The reality is, if it goes to landfill, it is never coming out, and that's why we're looking at alternatives. The second issue that Commissioner Vonk mentioned is that we're working to attract NAWTEC, which is the National Association of Waste Energy Facilities, their national conference in 2020 to Kent County. And we've been having conversations with their CEO, and we're working closely with Experience Grand Rapids, who's partnering with us, as well as they partnered with us, and we're bringing in the Building Material Reuse Association conference this fall, which was last held in Portland, Oregon. So they awarded Portland last year, they're awarding us this year, and that'll be in September. It's a 2-day conference that's national level. We expect several hundred people to attend.
Thank you.
Commissioner Korndike.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Dar, thank you for your work and leadership since you've been our director. You've done a great job, and a lot of great stuff going on at the Department of Public Works right now. In regards to the business park, could you maybe talk a little bit about that? I know it's going to be, possibly an example for the rest of the country that they can follow this model, and also maybe give us a quick update on what you know about the 100th Street Bridge that is very important to us getting to our facility waste.
Sure. So specific to the resource park, this has been an organic conversation that developed from a visioning process that our department went through a couple of years ago, and that was affirmed by the board itself. we believe that there's a time and a place to shift the paradigm in terms of how we're managing municipal solid waste in Kent County. DPW has been in the business, if you will, since the 1960s. We see landfill disposal as an engineered solution, but an old solution to the future of how we manage solid waste in Kent County. There's certainly legacy issues that come with landfill operations, no matter how well you run them. And we're having a conversation at every level with commissioners, with municipal leaders, with business leaders, because ultimately we all have to decide together if we're ready to move material away from a landfill operation to new technologies, which can be as complicated, if you will, or as forward-thinking as gasification, pyrolysis, and other technologies, but as basic and simple as composting and other recycling technologies that really take material that is otherwise destined to be landfilled, and we're moving that material back into a value stream. We don't like to use the word refuse anymore. It's really a byproduct. It's material that was at one time mined or pumped from the ground or harvested, and we see the need to move that material back into the economy. We do that now at our recycling center. And there is a cost to doing that, but the value is that it ripples through our economy. It hires people, it puts people to work. We work with Padnos and other brokers. So there's many people that touch it and make money and move this material. One of the items that I gave to Commissioner Vonk a week or two ago is that last year alone, we recycled enough paper to the equivalent of not having to harvest 180,000 trees at our recycling center. That's a big deal, not because we shouldn't harvest trees, but we should harvest the material that we've used once and that there's an opportunity to use again. So this resource park, we just worked with purchasing and we issued a request for information. 23 companies, several that were international, responded to it. And we're going through this vetting process right now to determine the validity of each of these responses, and we're going to rank them and determine which companies could potentially lease and develop what would really be an industrial park, but it would be specifically for receiving construction and demolition debris, receiving material that should be composting, taking other low-value materials that we're having a difficult time moving to the market and making energy out of it. So that's the overview of what we're doing. And again, we're visioning it. We're sharing the concerns, the problems, the opportunity. It's going to be the Board of Commissioners, the Board of Public Works, and our community and business leaders that have to decide if we're going to embrace this or not and move forward with it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to echo my colleagues on the Department of Public Works boards, Commissioners Korndike and Vonk. We're extremely pleased at the direction where the department is going and appreciate all your hard work over the last few years. Obviously, these are some pretty stark numbers, right? Less than 10% of waste in Kent County is recycled. 75% of what's in the landfill could be reused. You talked about the resource park. What are the ways that we could encourage curbside recycling and consumer sorting throughout the county?
So there's two things, if we can just focus on the residential side for a moment. First of all, if municipalities would consider a blended rate ordinance, which would basically do this. If you subscribe for a trash cart, you automatically subscribe to a recycle cart, and there's one rate for each, or for both, if you will. Because the experience that everyone has shared with me, and me personally, is that when you start with your trash cart, it's full. You bring in the recycling cart, and before you know it, your recycling cart's full, and there's like a bag or two of trash. And, I put my trash cart out at the curb maybe once a month, and I can't wait to get the recycling cart out every other week. So an ordinance at a municipal level that would say a blended rate would encourage that if you're going to subscribe to trash, you're automatically going to have recycling. And if you do it right, the cost shouldn't be that much more, and then you're moving that material into a recycle stream. The one challenge that we have is multifamily, and that's the second part of the answer. And that is, we're actually looking to pilot a new style of container that could be placed in at multifamily apartments, townhouses, things of that nature, that is similar in size to what you would see there, like a 6 or 8 yard container, but it's designed so that people participate in recycling and putting material in. We're currently working with a waste hauler. We're talking with the city of Kentwood and others because we want to pilot that not only at our drop-off sites because it would become more efficient, but we want to show, and this has been an issue for as long as I've been in this business, how do you make multifamily recycling work? So hopefully later this year we'll be able to pilot that and then transition ourselves away from drop-off sites, because now the multifamily locations, those that are enjoying apartment living, will have access to something they don't have right now.
And what can we do about composting at that?
So composting, there's a couple of things. First, you can choose to backyard compost. That may be a matter of convenience, but most of these things are. If not, a good compost facility operates by taking yard waste first, and then you can blend food waste into it. Subscribing to a yard waste container, if you're choosing, or a compost container, which we really don't have locally yet, but there are some communities that, you take your paper towel. We have Organic Cycle at the DPW, where our paper towel and food waste and things that we generate out of our own kitchen from breaks and whatnot goes to composting. It doesn't go to trash. So whether you have to have a third container for that or a split container, which some communities have, there are opportunities to do that. But there's education and working with the haulers and just the paradigm shift that everyone has to kind of get themselves through as you transition to something like that. I've given numbers at the Board of Public Works level. Waste to energy between soiled paper, food waste, and other organics, half of the material that goes to a waste to energy facility could go to a compost facility if it was diverted out instead of sent to us. Another quick number, 21,000 tons of corrugated cardboard go to the waste energy facility every year for combustion. It's not trading where it was, but it's still, $80, $90, $100 a ton if it were extracted out. And we're looking at a pre-processing facility there. We've shared that thinking as well, where we would process that material out instead of combusting it to give us more capacity. And I forgot your question, Hunter Street. They're going to rebuild it, as I understand, the way it was for now. I believe they're milling the underpass to provide more height but ultimately the DOT and others are looking at replacement, but the replacement of that bridge is somewhere between $8 and $10 million, so it's a matter of funding from the state.
But it's critical to our South Kent landfill.
It is critical to South Kent, but it's critical to many, many businesses in that corridor.
All right, I think we have time for a couple more questions, and then we probably need to move on. Commissioner Talon.
I have 4.
Oh.
I'll try to be quick. You mentioned in regard to the PSC decision on electric rates, you talked about the WTE.
Yes.
Does that also affect the methane electric production at the landfill, or is that different than the WTE? You didn't mention it, but is it affected in the same way, those rates?
Ultimately, it will. Energy Developments, which is formerly Granger, we have a contract with them. We are provided revenue from the operation of the plant. They operate it for us. They have a power purchase agreement with Consumers Energy that would be affected as well.
And how much is that electric generation compared to what the WTE? Is it like half, a quarter?
Sure. So WTE is plated at 18.2 megawatts. The landfill gas to energy plants plated at 3.2 megawatts. The difference is landfill gas to energy is about 3,000 homes comparison. Waste to energy is about 11,000 homes.
Just kind of a frustrating observation, and I usually tend to look at outcomes when we look at the performance measures and rather than outputs, but the tons processed at the recycling center went down 10%, and the tonnage at the landfill and the WTE went up 10%, and that I'm sure that's part of that's significant reason for the the new campaign, but that's just really frustrating after all the things we've tried to do over the years to encourage people to recycle. It's just not happening.
Yeah, we did have a slight decline. The reason for that is our facility was offline for 4 weeks last year while we replaced the baler in June. Then 3 weeks we retrofitted the plant. We spent about $250,000 a year refurbishing that facility because a recycling center like that with all the mechanics, it's a very complex operation, and you literally wear the plant out completely in 10 years. So if you're not constantly refurbishing, but that's why some residents held their material until after December for those that we were able to communicate with. But we did send quite a bit to waste to energy because we couldn't find an alternative. You should see those numbers begin to go back up.
Is the video available online that we saw?
We have it at our DPW website, so if you go to Access.
So we can find it there?
Yes, you can.
Last one, if I could. And this is more directed toward my colleagues, I guess, and staff, and that is to say that we have an opportunity, perhaps a responsibility, to be the leaders and the examples in the efforts to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Not sure that we do that well with it all the time in terms of avoiding use of disposable materials when we're at meetings week after week, in terms of having facilities, good facilities like the ones that we saw in there with the various options for recycling in our facilities here in the administration building, at the health department, and so on. So I want to encourage us to be thinking about and trying to figure out ways that we can set the example, that we can lead, that others can see, oh, you know, I can learn from what my leaders in this community are doing. So just that encouragement and suggestion.
Great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stick.
I will pass in light of the time.
All right. Commissioner Womack.
Thank you for your presentation today. Are there any events or special marketing that you have in mind each year for Earth Day that might bring more community participation?
We do some event planning or some education around Earth Day, but we think every day is Earth Day. So we're trying to do that continually, but certainly we can always drive more messaging into Earth Day. I don't know, and others would have to share with me, if it still gets the attention from residents and as it used to, or if it's just another blip on their calendar. So we tend to focus more holistically on the overall message, but we certainly could drive it into certain events on Earth Day. I believe it was on Saturday this year, and I'm not sure if Earth Day is always on Saturday, but sometimes you lose that messaging a little bit on the weekend.
There's a lot of national advertising that we could probably ride along with, and a lot of people on Earth Day get to thinking, like, what am I going to do? What should I be concentrating on? But are there any other events that you have planned throughout the year that just get the community and the county residents involved with something to look forward to? Like, this might be a day that they might try something new with recycling, but then it might become a habit for them that, as you say, can avoid them some expenses, can help our environment, can help us with energy. Are there any events? Because a lot of times people need just an initial welcoming to something like this so they can stay involved.
We do participate. I don't have them top of mind, but the Miranda has, I think, summer events that we participate in and Rock the Block. I will put that list together and I'll email it to Wayman, who can share that with the commissioners.
And when it comes to technology, like the computers, cell phones, a lot of those computers are dinosaurs within 5 years. The kids are going through cell phones every 3 months. Are we doing any marketing to try to get some of that technology brought into us and recycled?
So we do have an electronics recycling program. Excuse me. We do accept that at the recycling center at South Kent and the North Kent transfer station. Most of the material we accept at no charge, but we do charge for the older style CRT monitors and TVs. And we do have a web presence, and we make it part of our education programs.
Okay, and my last question is, what are your marketing plans for the next 24 months as you try to increase to 20% by 2020? What are your marketing plans for the next 24 months?
The items that we're looking at and working on, excuse me, is specific to our piloting of the recycling for multifamily, most likely in the Kentwood area because we have a Kentwood drop-off site. So we're trying to build route density around that. So that'll be one focus area. Once we have a better and more clear understanding of the results of the request for information for the resource part, we'll begin to develop branding and thinking around that. We do have a company that assists us with public relations. We have our own marketing and communication staff. And so we're certainly there's a lot of things you can do organically through social media, but there's also media buys that you tend to make, and we want to make sure when we make those buys that we're investing wisely. The biggest thing that we learned of ourselves in the last couple of years is a lot of our messaging was built on thinking from 20 years ago, and we needed to look at our community as it is today.
Does the public relations, as they do some of these media buys, do they try to incorporate also some interviews, either on television, radio, or people with large followings on the internet? Do they have, how many interviews would you say your department is doing per year within the media? Is it television, radio, and internet?
I would say several dozen. We work with the communications director at the county administration and our marketing staff within DPW.
Are there any schedule that I should be looking out or let the public know to?
I'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that kind of concludes. Dara, I have a ton of questions too, but just real quick, kind of to Commissioner Talon's point, I have kids in school. I would love to pen a letter to each school district in my district to get them through the recycling center. Can we handle capacity if we all started really pushing this? Can you handle that capacity to generate a lot more kids through the recycling center?
In June, the Board of Public Works will be seeing a request for an additional staff person just for that.
And then I would like to continue, I say this every time, encourage some sort of sort system at our parks. And I want to at some point talk to you about recycling straws. So thank you so much for all of your time today, and awesome job. Appreciate everything. All right, we're going to move on to Becky Beckler, Public Affairs Associates Legislative Update. Brief legislative update, if possible.
It's nice to be with you this morning. This legislature continues to move forward with the three priorities that they want to accomplish before they adjourn in June. And as I reported last time I was here, our priorities mostly are being resolved in the Senate, so we're watching very closely how the Senate moves forward. Last week, the Senate did move all of their budgets over to the House. The week before, the House had moved all of their budgets to the Senate. So the next piece of action that is required is be the Revenue Estimating Conference, which is next Tuesday. And from there, they'll make the final determination of how much money is available for this budget. And then the legislative leaders will go about assigning a certain number to every budget, and then they can resolve those budgets through the conference committees. They're still on target to get done by the first or second week of June, which has been a very aggressive schedule. But because there are really not significant items of difference, this should be something that they are able to accomplish. When the Senate passed their budget, however, there were a couple items I do want to bring to your attention because they could have some implications on the county. In the corrections budget, Senator Prose did not accept the governor's recommendation to end the privatization of food service. So the question is, who will be required to do those inspections should they do that? So we have boilerplate that we're asking the senator to consider that would make sure that if county local health departments are required to do this, they are paid sufficiently. He has set aside $5 million, but we're making sure that there's some parameters around that, so we continue to watch that. Senator McGregor had a couple provisions I wanted to bring your attention to, and one of them is very good in the fact that he is seeking that the state replicate two programs that are here in Kent County, the Kent County Services Network as well as the Community and Schools. It's part of the Senate's version of the school safety package. He's put $10 million as startup money in hopes that the state will start a statewide program. So congratulations to the county for creating programs that the legislature wants to make statewide. There's another provision in the budget that was there in subcommittee but didn't get a lot of attention until it hit the Senate floor. within this budget, and it essentially would end Healthy Michigan for an individual who's been on the program for 4 years and who also has an income of 100% of poverty. This sparked a firestorm on the Senate floor. It is still in there. It is not in the House version, but it does cause quite a bit of consternation, especially with the executive office, who's not excited about this provision. So we will continue to follow that as it goes through the conference committee. Senator Shirkey's legislation that would have a work requirement for Medicaid recipients is moving through the legislature. There was a hearing last Tuesday. It was a 2-hour hearing. He anticipates more hearings will occur. It sounds like he's willing to move the 29-week down to the 20-week, which would mirror the food stamp requirement. And he's also open to some other requirements that he will need to get in order for the governor to find his support for that issue. So we'll continue to follow that. The House has a very aggressive schedule on the legislation that deals with the Michigan State University Larry Nassar situation. If you recall, in last month, the Senate approved a very aggressive package. Most concerning is a piece of legislation that would allow a 1-year look back of 15 years retroactive for sexual assaults. The House does not have that provision, and they are considering moving the package and mirroring both package, but leaving that provision out. But they still haven't made a final conclusion, so I will keep you posted on that issue. I know it's very concerning to local units of government as well as businesses. And the final piece of action that the legislature is being, I guess, forced to consider, they don't necessarily have to take action, are some of the citizen initiatives that are finally getting approval from the Secretary of State's office. The first one up is recreational marijuana. The legislature has the opportunity to pass the law, therefore it would no longer be on the ballot, or they could allow it to be on the ballot, or they could offer a competing provision. They have 40 days to do that. It was presented to the legislature last Tuesday, so they have until, I believe, June 5th in which to decide what they want to do. The complicating factor for the legislature is that just last year they passed legislation offering a lot of regulation around medicinal marijuana, taxing, all sorts of regulations. This for recreational would not have those same provisions. So do they allow 2 separate standards? Politically, what do they do as far as voting for recreational marijuana versus medical marijuana? So it's something that the Senate is going to be doing an off-site caucus on Thursday, trying to consider that. They're also very concerned that the Speaker of the House has indicated that they don't plan to take up this provision. They're going to allow it to go to the ballot. So they want to make sure that if the Senate votes on something, they're going to make sure that the House votes on it. Otherwise, it has no need for that vote. Probably next up are similar provisions would be repealing the prevailing wage. They also got the necessary signatures. However, that's caught up in some legal battle right now, but that could be the next one up for the legislature. There's also a minimum wage requirement that appears to have the necessary signatures, and then there's redistricting, would take redistricting out of the hands of the legislature and put it into a separate commission. That could also be sent to the legislature. So there are some issues in addition to their priorities that they will be at least proposed that they could deal with or let it go to the ballot. So those are some of the issues that they will probably be considering over the next 3 to 4 weeks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Just in the interest of time, I know that some other groups are going to be using this room here shortly, so we do have a couple more items to get through. So any urgent questions for Becky? Commissioner Steck?
Urgent, that's hard. Just quickly, June 5, what has to happen by June 5? They have to actually have passed the alternative plan in both the Senate and the House?
Yes, that is the deadline. They have 40 days in which to act, otherwise it goes to the ballot. So they could pass legislation approving it, that way it wouldn't have to go to the ballot, or they can pass a competing piece of legislation.
But again, it has to be through the process by June 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Commissioner Ponstein?
Mine's along that same line, too. What is the benefit, because I know Meekhoff and Leonard are in disagreement, of them doing this that would allow them to do other things?
I may be answering this correctly, but tell me if I'm not. So it would, for them to act before it goes to the ballot, would take a simple majority of the legislature to do that. If they wait till the ballot initiative is either passed, say in November, then to make changes after that takes a 3/4 majority. Mm-hmm. And they find that would be very difficult. However, it would be lame duck session.
Mm-hmm. The issue of able-bodied people collecting welfare now. has the support of the governor now in some ways. What all is included in that? I mean, it's easy to throw out if you're able to work, do it. I mean, are there other things like drug testing and?
There's not drug testing, there are several exemptions. I'd be happy to send you the whole list, because it's very comprehensive about all the exemptions that are included.
Any other questions for Becky? All right, if you do, I'm sure she'd be happy to take an email or respond to a phone call as well. Thank you for making the drive over, appreciate it. Thanks for all your work. All right, item 5, federal lobbyist update. Matthew Van Zetten for a brief update.
This will be very quick. We just wanted to let everybody know that we do have a contract now with federal lobbyist, Potomac Strategies. They will be doing a site visit this week and introducing themselves at the board meeting on Thursday night. So you have a chance to meet Steve, Gary, and his team, and we'll give you an update on our priorities at that time. So that was primarily what we wanted to share, and we can answer questions.
Any questions for Matthew on that? Commissioner Ponstein?
Thank you, Chair Bolter. So when we say federalist lobbyists, they're going to be lobbying on our behalf.
They'll be lobbying on our behalf in Washington, D.C. at our direction.
So it's not a shared representing both us and Grand Rapids.
No, we have a separate contract with.
Commissioner Korndike.
I think I got the answer to my question, so.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope. And it sounds like we'll have the opportunity to talk to them on Thursday as well. Wonderful. All right, item 6, property tax primer. Matt Wolford, please come up.
Good morning, Commissioners. I will be very brief, and I'll just say that I will send a PDF of the presentation on to you for your individual follow-up and be happy to answer any questions that you have. So I'm just going to talk about 3 main ideas and concentrate a little bit, I think, in terms of some of the information in terms of the interplay between Proposal A and the Headley Amendment. So this year, we have an increase in the state equalized values of 4.7%, and we have an increase in the taxable value of 4.81%. The SCV, of course, is the number which is 50% of market value, and the taxable value is that which is limited by Proposal A. I was going to go into a little bit of a refresher on that. I'm going to skip that in the interest of time, and I'm just going to go on to some of the elements that I believe you are interested in terms of the Headley and the taxable value. This is just a breakdown of the class. This is, again, just some graphs of the differences in the interplay. I've often referred to Proposal A as a bit of a roller coaster, where you have the SCV following one particular track of value based on value, and you have taxable value following in a different track based on the limitation of the CPI on an individual property. In this example, if you look at the graph, the red line on the right graph represents the growth or the change in value over time of the SCV. The blue dotted line on the top represents the change in time over taxable value on the very same property. And if you'll notice, during the recession, the SCV came down and it sort of dragged down that blue line with it. So the SCV and the taxable value is the lesser of the state equalized value or the cap value. And then, beginning in 2012, as the market started to recover, the SCV line started to grow with the market, and the taxable value remained limited. And then in 2017, there was an uncapping, and you see that growth in that dotted blue line all the way back up to the SCV. So this is sort of a visual depiction of the Proposal A roller coaster, and I'm going to give you a few examples of how that plays out on an individual basis. So this is a house in Tyrone Township. The high SCV on this property prior to 2005, was in 2005, and it was 107,300, if you look at that. Today, that SCV is at 87,400. The taxable value back in 2005 was at 82,698. That was decreased during the Great Recession down to 70,500. And today, because of the constraints of inflation, the taxable value is at the 75,195. $75,194. So here in 2018 today, with the same exact millage rate that the county has levied, not factoring in for, any Headley rollbacks at this point, this particular property is paying $32 less in property taxes today than it did in 2005 because the taxable value is limited in their growth. So that's a 9% at this rate with just the CPI. It's still going to take this particular property 4.5 years to get back to the taxes it was paying at the high point prior to the recession. So that's an example of Proposal A playing itself out in this particular example. This is another example, a house in Wyoming. In 2006, at the high point, it was paying $559 in property taxes to the county. Today, in 2018, that rate is $530. So because there's been no uncapping on this parcel and it went down in Proposal A, we still haven't recovered on this individual parcel going forward. Now, this house represents an example of an uncapping. So if you'll notice on this one in the lower left, this one has actually had a 30% increase, not a decrease, because this property uncapped in 2017 and the limitations of Proposal A came off. So the reason I wanted to show you this today is that you have to look, it's a 220,000 questions asked a singular time on each individual property. So when we look at the macro numbers and we look at the overall increases, it's a combination of all of these individual examples. So many properties are paying less, in fact, than they did at the beginning of the Great Recession, and many of the ones that have turned over are paying more. Again, just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over some of the provisions of Proposal A. One thing I would like to discuss with you is that we're monitoring the trends in terms of some of the things that are going to impact us going forward into the future. Exemptions are very topical right now for various classes of property, medical buildings, big boxes, appeals, and things of those lines. We also are following veterans exemptions. Veterans exemptions in the past couple of years have come into the fore. It's a policy discussion. The only thing I state about that is the first time that the property tax exemptions have been attached to a group of individuals as opposed to the property itself. So it can travel with the individuals. It's just another item that we're going to be following that could have an impact. And then the other thing besides Proposal A is Headley, of course, and Headley is the limitation not at the individual property level, but against the overall property valuation of the taxing authority. And so the Headley Amendment's been around longer. It's always been into effect. And together with Proposal A, they act to constrain both the valuation side and the Headley acts to constrain the overall property tax rate. This is just an example of the tax rate form that we have in Kent County. Each taxing authority has to submit this on columns 10 and 11, as you see there, are the tax rates. We are limited in our special elected ones. There is a Headley rollback this year that is going to impact the county. It has not impacted the general fund at this point, but if current trends hold and we outgrow, the market continues to outgrow the rate of inflation, we will continue to see impacts on Headley into the foreseeable future. This chart here is just a quick overall view of what the opportunity costs of the Headley rollback is having. At this point, it's estimated there's about $160,000 opportunity cost of the rollback for those special elected millages that they otherwise would have been able to levy beyond what they're going to be able to levy in 2018. Trends and challenges, I already mentioned some of the exemption issues. We will continue to monitor the personal property rollback, the phase out, significant, the commercial, utility, and industrial commercial property. Industrial used to make up about 40% of the personal rolls. That's down to 20%, and it will continue to phase out down through 2022 when the last of the industrial and eligible manufacturing personal property comes off the rolls. And lastly, just we are entering into a growth cycle, or we're into our our 6th year now of a growth cycle. That growth cycle has caught up to the point now where we will need to monitor the impacts of the Headley calculations on the overall budget process. Whoops. What to expect? I expect residential values will continue their upward rise. Industrial capacity, we are growing, we need space. There's a little bit of reshuffling. Primary properties are going quickly, older ones are being repurposed. Commercial retail continues its transitions from bricks and mortar to clicks and bricks, a combination of the two, with the online retailing and retailers figuring out the particular mix of how they're going to respond to the online growth. And personal property reform will continue to reduce our revenues over the course of time. This is just a reference. If you are you interested in your own personal property, there's a tool out there on the State of Michigan website which allows you to go in and enter. So if you're between homes or you're looking at estimating your personal property, there's an estimate so you can see how the interplay of Proposal A goes onto homes that you're looking for. And I was tried to be very abbreviated. I know you guys are pressed for time. Be happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, like I said, we'll send you on a PDF of the presentation.
Commissioner Ponstein?
Thank you, Chair Bolter. This will be quick. So on the uncapping issue, it's sold, it gets caught up.
Yep.
What happens if I own a home and I put a brand-new second story on or a new wing? Does the whole property become uncapped, or is there a formula for the new part?
Yeah, there's no uncapping at all for properties that have not transferred. Now, the value of the new construction can be brought onto your individual assessment as an addition to the taxable value, because it's the existing improvements are subject to the property tax cap. If you had a swimming pool, or if you do what you're talking about, and it brings on new value to the property, that can be added to your previous taxable value. And then from that year thereon, it will also be limited by the CPI.
Any other questions for Matt? All right, seeing none, thank you, Matt. Appreciate everything you do, and great presentation. All right, on to item 7, Commissioner Miscellaneous. Any pertinent, important, Commissioner Womack?
Yes, on the Asset Board of Michigan Works, we did approve a policy for a summer youth jobs program that will be also employing a lot of children that are in the foster care. So there's some great things that's happening in our county, and I just want to thank Public Works today for their presentation and giving us a chance to see how we as commissioners can help get their message out and help with all the hard work they're already doing.
Any other Commissioner Miscellaneous? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
I am Kent County. I am Kent County.
I am Kent County.
We are 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 Kent County.
Beya, Kent County. Ami, Kent County.
Somos Kent County.
Mas Ira, Kent County.
We are Kent County.
We are Kent County.
We are Kent County. Oh yeah.